This meeting is being recorded.
Good morning, everybody. Today is Saturday, April the 9th, 2022. You are watching or listening to another edition of Forward Maryland. I'm Bill Woodcock.
And I'm Steve Hunt. Good morning, everybody.
And we have a jam-packed show this morning, so let's get right into it. I know a number of you out there in viewer and listener land have been eagerly awaiting our April gubernatorial top 10, and we will be getting to that in just a minute. But Steve, first thing I wanted to do today, and you and I have talked about this, but for those of you in the town in which I live, Columbia, Maryland, it is the season of village board elections. So for those of you who don't live in Columbia and are not aware of Columbia, Columbia is not an incorporated city, which is kind of a shame. It is actually managed and run by a homeowners association called the Columbia Association. The Columbia Association is governed by a president CEO who is hired by a board of directors, of which there are 10, one who is elected from each of the 10 villages. Also, each village in Columbia also is governed and managed by a village manager, village staff, and also a board of directors comprised of 5, 7, maybe 9 people. So this is the season for those village board elections and also for those elections to the Columbia Association Board of Directors. And in the village of Wilde Lake, we have 2 friends of the podcast, both former guests of the podcast who are running. There is the incumbent, Tina Horn, and then there is Bill Santos, who is the challenger. And last year they both ran for the vacancy, and by a narrow margin, Bill Santos lost. I would like to urge anybody out there in viewer and listener land who might be in Columbia, and specifically the village of Wilde Lake, to elect Bill Santos as the new Columbia Association board representative from Wilde Lake. Bill has a terrific range, width, breadth, depth of experience in Columbia and Howard County affairs. Howard County and Columbia are above and beyond all else land use communities, and Bill's experience on the county level, on the Howard County Planning Board for, I believe, 10 years, gives him a deep level of knowledge in not just how to plan, but how to plan right, and how Columbia should grow in a sane manner. Also, the Columbia Association itself is going through a transitionary time. There is a new president of CA who has only been in the job for, it'll be a year, come next month. And there have been some drives to, redefine what the Columbia Association does and what services does it provide for its residents. Bill is a very experienced voice, having also been a Wilde Lake Village Board member, and a independent voice. He's not attached to any group or I should say gaggle of activists or business officials, civic people behind the scenes who are looking to redefine what Columbia is for the benefit of lining their own pockets. If you are looking for somebody to elect to the Columbia Association Board of Directors from Wilde Lake, who will put residents' interests first and who will not be concerned about their own political career, their own need to listen to the sound of their own voice, Bill Santos is that person. I've known Bill for over 20 years now, and he is of level head, strong character, and he would be a benefit to the board of directors of CA. And I know, Steve, I know you don't live in Columbia, but you've known Bill for a while. There may be some things you'd like to say as well.
Sure. And not being a Columbian, but maybe a quick, public service announcement for the good people of all of the villages of Columbia. Just a reminder, Bill, their elections are not the same day as primaries and that sort of thing. And the last I heard, unlike the great state of Maryland, Columbia has not moved their election date. So what would that date be for the folks in Columbia to know when to get out there and vote?
It would actually be in, I believe, 3 weeks from now, on the 30th of April.
Okay, so my first message is get out there and vote, because I know, you're right. I've known Bill for a long time. I've also known Tina for a good while. And I know the last election, I think the whopping sum of maybe 500 votes were cast, and maybe 600, but we're talking about several hundred in a village of several thousand, and Columbia, which is, a pretty big place. So the fact that you only get a few hundred people voting for a position that, quite frankly, has maybe more effect on your lives in many ways than your county council, your county executive, your state. I mean, these are the people, especially the way Columbia is organized. They really do have, this board has true impact, along with the members of the individual village boards. As far as two candidates involved, you're right. I've known Bill for north of 20 years. Great guy, smart guy. I actually serve with him now on the Howard County Board of Appeals. He is the chair. I am the vice chair. Previous to that, he served on the Howard County Planning Board. So when you talk about issues of land use, planning, zoning, he brings all of that to the table. He's an engineer by trade, quite frankly. And when you look at Columbia, it's now past 50 years. It's no longer about how to develop Columbia. It's how to redevelop Columbia, how to reposition it. The whole village center concept got pretty much blown up by the rise of Route 175 and the big box stores. So, how to position Columbia for the future. A planner is good to have in doing that. And, as far as Bill locally in Wilde Lake, for those of you who like the redeveloped Wilde Lake Village Center, Bill was key, critical, and central to that. He had a vision for that as a type of mixed use area that could position Wilde Lake, the village center, to be successful in the future. And if you've ever been there, it is awesome, especially compared to some of the other older village centers that haven't been redeveloped. So Tina, I cannot say enough good things about her. She is as passionate an activist and advocate as I have ever met. I remember her on, I think it's Governor Warfield Parkway. I might have the street wrong. Holding up signs, talking about injustice and racial inequality. She was Black Lives Matter before Black Lives Matter became cool to a lot of people after, George Floyd's murder. So I can't say enough good things about her passion and her advocacy, but you're right. When you talk about the future of Columbia, Wilde Lake, and the other villages with, obviously Columbia downtown, having that planning experience, having that experience as an engineer, and that vision of what Columbia can be born. And I don't know if he was born in Columbia. I know Bill was raised in Columbia. You talk to him and he is Columbia through and through. Jim Rouse would probably be proud of the guy. I think he's your man going forward to take Columbia forward, and specifically the Wilde Lake Village forward. So that's all I would have to say. Two good people, but for if you talk about the future of Wilde Lake and Columbia, I think Bill's the better choice because of what he brings to the table.
And Steve, I let me issue a correction, and I'm embarrassed for this correction. And I thought I was right. I thought I was wrong when I said what I said. So I'm ridiculous today. The village election itself is Saturday, April 23rd. And so, but you can vote before that. So residents of Wilde Lake and residents of other villages that are having elections, you can vote by mail. You should have received a ballot by now. If not, you can go to your local village office and you can learn where those are yourself. But there's also in-person voting, and that is Saturday, April 23rd. So 2 weeks from today, not 3, from 10 to 1, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Slayton House in Wilde Lake. So vote Wilde Lake, vote Bill Santos, elect a great person to the CA Board of Directors.
Yeah, vote Columbia. Get out there.
Onward and upward, forward, as we tend to say in this fine program, Steve. So for the remaining 30 minutes or so, we are going to share with you out there in viewer and listener land our latest gubernatorial top 10. Steve, did you start last time?
I believe I did. So in this snake draft format, I believe, Mr. Woodcock, you should start first.
Snake draft format of 2.
Yeah,
I advertised on Facebook that I think there's going to be some disruption. So there's been some polling, there have been some endorsements, there have been some people who have had to make decisions and declare, as former Ravens coach Brian Billick would say, decide and declare what your intentions are. And so there's going to be a shakeup. Dropping out of this ranking entirely on my part, on my ranking, is former U.S. Education Secretary John King. And I think that deserves a little bit of I guess you could call it an honorable mention. His campaign is completely leaking oil, failing to take off. It's not that he's a bad guy. I mean, he's trying, he's working very hard. But I believe that his lane has been very effectively taken up by another candidate, and that would be Wes Moore, and he will appear in the ranking. But coming back into the ranking after a few months away at number 10 is Robin Ficker, the Republican candidate. Yes, he was just disbarred. Yes, he has changed all of his 2-cent signs up and down Route 50. But Steve, and that old political maxim, I'm going to go with any press being good press. And considering as he's at least received some press, he at least has demonstrated that his campaign at least has a weak pulse, which is a little bit better than I can say for the King campaign. And so I have him as number 10. Who you got?
Well, I have the aforementioned John King at number 10, and Robin Ficker would have gotten my honorable mention, but I just cannot take I don't see his chances as, being serious enough to put in the top 10. As far as John King, endorsements are what they are. I think some are more important than others. I think some are more important to certain people than others. And, recently the Maryland State Educators Association, I may have that name wrong, but it's the MSEA. It's a group that represents educators in the great state of Maryland. They had their endorsement meeting and they endorsed Wes Moore. Now, if you're John King and you're an educator by trade and you helmed the U.S. Department of Education, and you have made education, the implementation, the blueprint, et cetera, your signature issue. I mean, that's John King's calling card. And your own peeps, as they might say, don't have your back. That, where I come from, is defined as a problem, and a big one at that. Is it a fatal blow? Is it a death blow to one's campaign? No, but if you're John King, I don't know where you go from here. He had a good fundraising number in January. We'll see what his April number looks like. So he certainly has the financial means to carry on. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, to what end? So I kept him in the top 10 over Ficker, but everything you said is right. And like I said, this MSCA endorsement or lack thereof for Mr. King, where he goes from that, I don't know. So that's where I have him.
Well, who you got at 9?
Number 9, I have Ashwani Jain. I don't know if there's anybody working harder than this guy. We've had him on the show. We talked about his campaign, his fundraising style, the crowdfunding, and all that stuff. But I mean, every time you look up on social media, he is somewhere. So he's putting in work. He certainly has a good message, and I'm sure those people who he can touch, it may resonate on some level. I don't know if there's a path all the way there for Ishwani Jain. And we talked about it before after he was on the podcast that whichever Democrat, if a Democrat wins the race and becomes next governor, this is somebody you need to look at for putting in your administration, because he's got something going. And so for that, I put him at number 8. Puncher's chance, long shot chance, but a chance because of the work he's putting in.
Well, you put him at number 9. You said. I think you just said number 8, but you meant 9.
I'm sorry, number 9. My bad. Yes.
Sure. So to your point about who can actually win, I mean, do I think Robin Ficker can actually become governor? No. Do I think John King can? Not really. And the same thing I believe of my number 9, who's Ishwani Jain. Also, yeah, I mean, everything you said, Steve, plus I will say he's building a network that will serve him well for future campaigns for office or for professional opportunities for him personally, other leadership things that may come down the road. And I think it's important to bring up, to kind of augment your point about, now is the time. I mean, we're still doing the top 10, and we're going to do this in May and in June and whenever the primary might be, leading towards that. But the universe of people who could legitimately get elected governor is shrinking. And some might just have too many hurdles to overcome to get through the primary. So theoretically, yes, any of these people can get elected governor, but will they? Not likely. And in some cases it's a shame. And that's a perfect transition into my number 8, who is also a friend of this podcast, former guest, former Anne Arundel County Executive Laura Newman. I'm very disappointed in how she's faring, but I'm also saying it's not that much of her fault. I believe that there are a few factors at play here. She's not tracking well in polls for a number of reasons. One, not much of a natural political base. I mean, she was appointed to the Anne Arundel County executive spot and didn't win election in her own right. She does have political roots in Howard County, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, but in none of those places had she served as an elected official. Plus, I find her, of course, I very much enjoyed her personal story and find her a quite compelling, not just candidate, but person. It is a shame that in such a progressive state of as Maryland that there aren't more groups that are going to her candidacy. And I'm not going to white male, man talk down to women's groups, but I do have to wonder out loud why women's groups are not supporting. Pardon me, I'm getting choked up about this. A strong white female candidate with a positive message, and who would look to break Maryland's version of that highest glass ceiling. She certainly has the chops, she has the skill set, she has the talent to do it. And then also, while she's at it, not just break that glass ceiling, but also break up a lot of the machine politics in the state of Maryland. Maybe that's the problem. Because she is running as, somebody who's outside of the outside. So again, great candidate. Given the structure and organization of some of these candidates when we get to our top 5, she would be an amazing superstar. She would be our Gretchen Whitmer. But right now, she doesn't have a chance, and that's sad.
Yeah. And my turn for number 8, and it is the same person at number 8, and that's Laura Newman. And I'll just say pretty much what you said, Bill. I mean, and I think that not to get into inside baseball and family squabbles, but I think that some groups are not just groups that support people like themselves, but they also only support people who think like they do. So I think that may be Ms. Newman's problem when you talk about some of the support of those who you would think logically would support somebody with her story, her profile, her background. But the fact is, I would say by her own admission, she's more to the moderate side of the fence. I think that Laura Newman is an example of why this whole idea of in Maryland you have to file as a slate hurts, because I could think of any number of the other candidates who are above her on this list who would be very fortunate, and it would be very strong as a ticket if at some point they could get nominated and say, my lieutenant governor, my running mate is Laura Newman. I think that would be a hell of a spot for her, because you're right. Yeah, I like your Gretchen Whitmer analogy, because yeah, she could be that. But reality is what it is. I'll be interested to see what her fundraising number looks like for April. There really wasn't one in January because she entered the race late. But I can't expand any further than what you said. But strong candidate, great candidate, and like I said, maybe along with Ashwani Jane, somebody who, if a Democrat wins the governor's mansion, she could make for one hell of a commerce secretary because of her business background.
Who do you have at number 7, Steve?
Okay, number 7 is my big faller of
big faller.
The big.
Well, you didn't say big baller like LeVar Ball. You're saying big faller.
Yeah, I've got my big trend up and my big trend down. So yes, not to be confused with big baller. My big faller is former Attorney General Doug Gansler. And look, friend of the podcast. Yes.
7. Yeah. Did you have him at 2?
I've had him at as high as 2. Last time I had him at 3. I now have him down to 7 because here's the bottom line. I'm a fan of this guy. He was on the podcast. I think he blew us both away with just how he presented himself, spoke to the issues, policy, etc. I still maintain that if you did a Mitt Romney and had a binder full of resumes and profiles of people not named Peter Franchot, and you laid that binder on the table and you said to the voters of Maryland, pick the profile of the person, no names, no faces, of the individual best positioned to take on the man himself, Peter Franchot, for the Democratic nomination, I would put money down that a majority of the people, if they did not pick Doug Gansler's profile, he's in the top 2 or 3. He's that strong when it comes to policy, experience. But at some point, what's potential and what's on paper has to translate into votes. It has to translate into momentum, and it has to translate into that sense that this person's going somewhere. And I'm just not seeing that. His fundraising number in January was not strong. We'll see what April's looks like. And at some point, to your point, Bill, you have to say who right now has the momentum, who has the base of voters and support that has a realistic shot at this thing. And I'm just not seeing signs of that with Doug Gansler. I wish I did, because I think he should be in the mix by all rights, but he's not, and it is what it is. And so I think there are others that I will talk about later who realistically have a better shot at the nomination, including possibly upsetting Peter Franchot than Doug Gansler right now. So he's my number 7. Bill, who you got?
Well, my 7, 6, and 5 are all people who are in the same theme as what I just said about Laura Newman. I mean, good candidates, strong candidates, but they're grinding their gears, they're spinning their wheels, and I'm not quite ready to give up on the Gansler yet, but who is in my number 7 is former Montgomery County Council member Tom Perez. He scored well in a recent poll. I believe he was either 3rd or 4th. A lot based on name recognition, but I don't see a lot of overwhelming support flocking to his campaign. Maybe it's, maybe it's more of a function of that, he seems, of these 3 candidates, so I'm gonna, reveal the next one momentarily. He seems to be in the biggest rut. His wheels of spinning, and they're up to the top of the hubcaps. The next person may only be in it to the middle of their hubcaps, and that is former state commerce and former state labor secretary Kelly Schultz, who I believe I've had as high as number 2 in these rankings, and also who was endorsed by Governor Hogan within the last month. So then, why am I saying that she's spinning her wheels? Because that endorsement really didn't create a bump. It really didn't get followed up by any media. It didn't get followed up by any, it didn't get followed up by any excitement. It didn't get followed up by any buzz. Our the Washington Post, Baltimore Sun, I mean, they did a perfunctory story on the endorsement, but you don't see anything. And what's mentioned is that, she's endorsed, but she's running in a primary with 3 other candidates on the Republican side. I even understand and saw a funny post by a former Republican delegate in Baltimore and Howard counties, even criticizing her signs, because even though the signs are white and her name is black, but Kelly is yellow, and just a bad color scheme. Of course, the person who I'm thinking of, in all fairness, used white and sky blue as his colors. So, but I like Don, so he knows who he is if he's out there. But anyway, the fact that the sitting governor's endorsement caused barely a ripple. So I have Kelly Schultz as number 6. What about you, Steve?
Okay, my number 6, and by the way, the whole thing about signs, I get a little PTSD because when I ran for office in 2018, there's an individual, he knows who he is, who fancies himself to be the Mr. Blackwell of sign ratings, and I think he said mine was the worst looking sign of any candidate running in Howard County. So, so don't get me started on people who aren't in the game or who have never been in the game rating signs, although this Baltimore County person, maybe they've actually run for something and not sat in the sidelines running their mouths. Anyway, enough of my bitterness.
It wasn't Don? That wasn't Don?
No, it was not.
Okay. Well, yeah, we'll have to talk about who this fool is at some point. Don at least has some smarts. And my delegate signs were red, white, and blue. So, But anyway, who do you have at 6?
Okay, 6, I have Tom Perez, who you just mentioned. And what I will say is, very quietly, Tom Perez has not run a bad campaign. He's raised a lot of money. He has got the endorsements mostly from the people who you would expect him to get endorsements from, a lot of labor unions, things of that nature. He made a good pick for his running mate. He's done a lot of good stuff, but as I was saying with Doug Gansler, at some point it has to translate into something. And, is there any buzz around the Tom Perez campaign? No. Is there any fire and flash or endorsements outside of his wheelhouse of organized labor? No. So at some point, I mean, he'll be around because he's got the money, but where is his base of voters? Where you you name me an area where he might get votes, and I will tell you who will get them instead of Tom Perez. Your grinding of the wheels analogy is very good, and I agree, and that's why I have Tom Perez where I have him right now at number 6.
And then where's your number 5? As now we're breaking into the top half of the rankings.
We are, and to me, the top 5 really, you're starting to get into people who have a realistic shot at this thing, whether it's the nomination or going all the way. And I open up with former Prince George's County executive Rashawn Baker. It's interesting about the Baker campaign. The news continues to not be to their favor. Another endorsement in Prince George's County went to Westmore. In this case, Aisha Braveboy. Not really a surprise because she was at the event where County Executive Angela Also Brooks announced her endorsement, and Ms. Braveboy at the time was like, "No, I'm just here hanging out." So we see where that goes. Also, there was the whole situation with the MSCA endorsement meeting where County Executive Baker could not make it. He had I believe it was a death of the family, and obviously our condolences to the Baker family. And he was going to have his running mate Nancy Navarro speak on his behalf. She was told she was going to be able to, and at the last minute she was told she wasn't going to be able to. So it was a whole back and forth between the Baker campaign and the MSCA. So it just continues to be an uphill battle. But in recent polls, he's still top 3. He's still there. He still has that name recognition. And the fact of the matter is, he brings a voting block with him. And I keep hearing the voice of friend of the podcast, Richard Deshay Elliott, in my head saying, the leaders in Prince George's County ain't the people in Prince George's County. And proof of that was, Rashawn Baker had an event recently where I think 5 members of the county council were behind him in showing their support. So he certainly still has that base of support in his county. So can't write him off. Need to see something out of him to say, okay, he really can get this done. But he is very much in the mix, and people who write him off, I think, would be making a mistake. So I have him at number 5 in this poll. And like I said, he's the first of my ones that I say really a truly realistic shot at this thing. Who you got, Bill?
Steve, don't these entities, don't these labor unions, these special interest groups, don't they know who the hell people are? I mean, what really are they going to learn through a heavily scripted interview that they're not already going to learn? Because they know these people. So why do they put up stupid rules like, oh, your lieutenant governor candidate can speak? Oh, no, they can't. What is this stuff?
Well, I think some of it is all about kissing the ring, as opposed to really getting answers to policy questions, even if they are policy questions that are of interest to your organization. I think a lot of it is just to say that, this candidate, came to us to get our support. And by the way, there was also some controversy with the MSEA endorser process with the Laura Newman campaign, where depending on who you believe, she either was given or not given enough time to fill out a questionnaire that apparently is, longer than, of mice and men. So certainly that endorsement process was not a smooth one by any stretch. So I think it's a lot of that. And I don't think it's a good look for the organization when they say, well, if we can't have the candidate who's running for governor, we're not going to even accept their lieutenant governor, especially under the circumstances by which Rashawn Baker could not make it. I mean, so again, not a good look, quite frankly, for the MSCA in that case. But I think it's a lot of that. It's let's take a picture with our president, with all of these candidates, on bended knee looking for our support. But it's kind of
the man became a widower in the fall, and then he had another death in the family. So I believe the MSCA, and no offense, Steve, but I believe you also underestimate the fact that people do remember the name Rashern Baker, not just for being a successful county executive in Prince George's County, but having run a very strong second and really should have been first candidate in the 2018 primary for governor. And, you know, I think there is many a person who voted in the Democratic primary for governor who wish they would have had a take back and not gone for the moderate, the low-level celebrity with Me Too issues, who once said that he was running for governor in a speech and he was running for governor of Virginia, who spent most of his time out of state raising money. I believe that people are going to remember Rashern Baker when it counts, which is at the ballot box. So I do not have him number 5. I have him higher than 5, and you'll see how high I have him later. But at number 5, I have Doug Gansler. I notice in both of our rankings that we're still both giving deference to the people with elected experience. Doug Gansler kind of ends that list of people whose campaigns are spinning wheels. That's not to say that they couldn't spin further, but I also think he's suffering from a little bit of the same issue that Tom Perez is. And in fact, had not the Hogan endowment of Schultz had just gone, made the crowd go mild, I mean, I probably would have put Gansler and Perez as tied, because their prior political experience, where I said it seems to be helping Baker, it's not helping either of these gentlemen that much at all. So Gansler 5, but if I had to have an arrow, I would also go, I would also point it arrow down, as they say. I forget who says that, but anyway, they say that. And then at number 4, I give my highest ranking ever to this year's moderately known celebrity candidate, Wes Moore. Although I have to say that whether consciously or unconsciously, his campaign is not making the mistakes of Ben Jealous's campaign for governor of Maryland. Steve, do you remember who Ben Jealous's lieutenant governor candidate was?
I know. Gosh, I do not. I can't. The name is not coming to me. Sorry.
Well, I don't remember it either. And I didn't even have enough chance to Google the sucker. Maybe I will in a minute. But Wes Moore picked Aruna Miller, who is a former state delegate and elected official in Montgomery County, and is not just quite popular, but also very smart. And it's probably an overreach to say the LBJ to Wes Moore's JFK. But it's clear there that that's some of the experience, is that he wants to get he wanted someone on his ticket who is very keenly tied into Maryland politics. I had a family emergency on Sunday, particularly a veterinary emergency on Sunday. So I could not attend a Wes Moore meet and greet that went on in Howard County, but I was impressed to see several very prominent Howard County elected officials, not just attending, but speaking on Wes Moore's behalf at that event. And, his popularity is picking up. The endorsement of the MSEA, which, as much as I'm not a fan of special interest group and labor union endorsements, they do matter in Maryland politics. The endorsement of Angela Also Brooks, the county executive of Prince George's County. Wes Moore is definitely trending up. He seems to be correcting the mistakes of, like I said, the other moderately known celebrity candidate with ties to the state of Maryland that some people kind of question. And so he's my number 4, But he can definitely go. He definitely can still go yet higher. Steve, where are you at number 4 as I try to go back to Googling this person?
Number 4, I actually have former Commerce Secretary Kelly Schultz. And in terms of the Hogan endorsement, I don't think it got any buzz because I don't think anybody was surprised. It wasn't like Larry Hogan was going to endorse Dan Cox after Dan Cox called for his impeachment. So I'm not surprised at the lack of buzz there. And look, let's just be honest. What's keeping the Kelly Schultz campaign afloat and keeping her in the mix for possibly winning the Republican nomination for governor of the state of Maryland is her opponent, who just when you think he could go lower, he finds a new bottom. I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff he's put out this week, but he apparently has fallen into this new Republican talking point. And this is a whole other podcast that we might have to do at night because it's not suitable for, audiences under the age of, I don't know, 50. But they have this new thing about child pornography and pedophilia. I mean, you saw it during the Ketanji Brown Jackson hearings, and you saw the tweet after her confirmation, but with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and apparently now Dan Cox is falling into that same trap. I don't know what's going on with these people, this Trumpist wing of the Republican Party that is now not just infected the Republican Party, but has taken the damn thing over. But, I just think that maybe enough Republicans will say a conservative is one thing, but what crazy is something else. Can't pull that lever for this guy. So to me, and I said this last time, so it's probably a broken record at this point. I might have said it the time before. It's not about anything miraculous or you're not going to write books about the Schultz campaign and how she won in a blue state if she ultimately becomes governor. It's not going to be like the story of Larry Hogan. It's going to be more of a story of she got through because she was sane. So I keep her at number 4 only because at some point, maybe Maryland Republicans see the light and realize that they're not just going to nominate a miserable politician, but quite frankly, a miserable human being. And maybe that's the line that they can't cross. I mean, you saw nationally, Republicans finally went after, who's the one that talked about orgies? That fool in Florida. Yeah, that clown in Florida. Maybe this is the line that Republicans will finally draw and say, okay, that's enough. So I have her at 4. Who you got at number 3, Mr. Woodcock?
Well, wait a minute. Well, who do you got at number 3? Because we're snake drafting.
Okay, so all right, so my number 3 is Wes Moore. In sports, they talk about momentum. And ain't nobody got the momentum right now that Wes Moore has. I mean, talked about the latest endorsements, MSCA, Prince George's County State's Attorney Aisha Braveboy. I also could not make the event on Sunday. It was actually being hosted by a mutual friend of ours, who the fact that he is so heavily behind Wes Moore is also pretty darn impressive. I won't name names, but the fact that he's all in, which is something he does not do, was pretty impressive. I did see pictures and got reports from the event. Very impressive event. And oh, by the way, we talked in one of our podcasts about Rashura Baker and how many people in Howard County were behind the Baker campaign, putting up signs, etc. That trend is starting to go more towards Wes Moore. There are several electeds in Howard County that have endorsed that campaign. So, he's got the buzz, he's got the momentum. I would say as of right now, the race is looking like, for the nomination on the Democratic side, it's looking like Francho versus Moore with maybe a Baker out there, a Perez out there, maybe a Gansler out there. But if you said, who are your top 2 at that nomination, you got to put Wes Moore there because, at least in my mind, because he's got all the momentum right now. And, he's looking strong, and I'm expecting a big number when the April finance reports come out, and he'll keep it going. So
well,
there it is.
The finance numbers might do it to me to make more number 3 or maybe even number 2, but my number 3 is still Rush Baker. Because of everything that I mentioned. I think he's still the only real name that people remember from the 2018 campaign. I mean, you know, the candidates were Ben Jealous, and by the way, Susie Turnbull,
Ah,
Democratic
yes.
Party activist, was the lieutenant governor candidate, and
Okay.
Kevin Kamenetz, the former Baltimore County executive, had passed away weeks before the election, so obviously he's not around to run again.
Right.
And then, you know, beyond that, you have people who have faded into the 7 wins. So Baker is still that name, and you know, that's why he's my number 3. So staying true to one of my principles, you are where you are until you either, you know, until you're not anymore, until you either do something to knock yourself down, or until somebody overtakes you. So could that time be coming for him? Possible. Is it here yet? No. Number 2, because in your ranking of Kelly Schultz still at number 4 shows that you have much more faith in the sanity of Maryland Republicans than I do. Number 2 is still Frederick County Delegate Dan Cox. Haven't seen anything to not make him number 2. And does he just keep doing his crazy? Yeah. Does his lieutenant governor running mate keep doing their crazy? Yeah. But also, let's look at this. What does it say that I put Dan Cox number 2? And I'm about to say a thing that apparently got somebody some official in the Maryland Democratic Party forced out of their position. And I guess if I was an official of the Maryland Democratic Party, I probably wouldn't say this, but I'm not. So I'm going to say it. I really have concerns about the electorate in the state of Maryland to elect a person of color to a statewide office. I'm sorry. I have concerns. Yes, Michael Steele was lieutenant governor for 4 years. I get it. People don't vote for lieutenant governor. There has never been a person of color as governor, as attorney general, or as Maryland state comptroller. Those are only the 3 most important elected jobs in the state of Maryland. And unfortunately, when I see a potential matchup of a Cox versus a Rushern Baker or a Cox versus a Wes Moore, I will work like hell and I will do everything in my power to get Baker or Moore elected to the office of governor. But I still think Maryland has a little bit of a problem with breaking that glass ceiling. And I can't say as I have that much faith, not just in Maryland Republicans, but maybe Maryland voters in general. So, his being number 2, please don't take that as any affinity for this man. Take that as a snapshot and a slice of where the electorate is now. I'd like to think that, not just Republicans would be smart enough to elect Kelly Schultz and not this clown, but also that Maryland voters would elect a Rush Baker, a Wes Moore, a Doug Gansler, a Tom Perez, a Laura Newman, before they would vote for this idiot. But I don't have that much faith. I'm sorry. Where are you on this?
I'm the same place you are. Delegate Cox at number 2, and to your point, Bill, it's not about who I want to win or who I'd like to see win, but who's got the best shot. That's why we do this. And right now, you've got to say he's got the best shot at it. Yes, I have a little more faith in our friends on the Republican side, but not a hell of a lot more than you do. You brought up an interesting issue about people of color getting elected, and you mentioned Michael Steele. Of course, we can mention our current Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford. But you're right, and you talked about the big 3. Attorney General and Comptroller. Look no further than those races this year. On the Comptroller race, the Democratic establishment was very quick to get behind Brooke Learman. And, the Attorney General race, my goodness, what a situation there with, Anthony Brown and O'Malley. I can't remember her first name right now. Yeah. So look at that race. It'll be interesting to see how that ends up in terms of, where people of color stand. So as far as the governor's race, yeah, I can't say any more than you just did. And it makes a hell of a statement, but, primaries are base driven, low turnout typically. And in that scenario, I still favor Dan Cox, and I actually, it's not even I have to think about which one between Cox, Schultz, and even if you go Ficker into the mix, you ask me, I'm going to say Dan Cox, no problem. We'll see how that turns out. But right now, he's my number 2 as well.
And Steve, who's topping your list?
Well, as you said, you are who you are, and you talked about Rush Baker. You're going to leave him where you're going to leave him until he shows that he needs to fall off. And it's Peter Franchot, state comptroller. I see no reason why he is not the betting favorite, not just to win the nomination, but to win the whole truckload. I just, he has done. Has he run this campaign that's going to be inspirational, that's going to, make people say, oh my gosh, it's the greatest thing we've ever seen? No. But the man does what Peter Franchot always does, what he needs to do to get the job done. That's just how he rolls. It's not going to be flashy. It's not going to be spectacular. He's not going to have events like we just talked about with Westmore over in Howard County and everybody, falling all over themselves to talk about what a, wonderful, paragon of virtue he is. But people just realize that Peter Franchot does one thing well. He gets shit done. Pardon my French on a Saturday morning, but that's what he does. And he and his running mate, Ms. Anderson Walker, that they just get it done. And so until somebody can find that secret sauce to knock him off, this is not 2018, because as much as we both think about Rashawn Baker, I think that Peter Franchot is a whole different level in terms of maybe the insurgent taking out maybe who might have been the favorite. So I just cannot find a scenario where Peter Franchot is not ending up being the nominee here. He's still got to keep working and still got to get it done, but he just keeps getting it done. And that's why I have him at number 1 until further notice. Bill, where are you at?
Steve, does all he do is win, win, win no matter what?
That's what the brother does. That's what he does.
Are you saying he's a latter-day Wiz Khalifa?
He just puts it down and gets it done. That's how he rolls.
well, he's my number 1 as well. And Steve, I don't really think I want to belabor the point. Everything you said, and we should have planned this podcast today out a little bit better, because I want you, because you deservedly get the credit for lining up our next podcast guest. We will not be podcasting next weekend due to the Easter weekend. But Steve, tell the good people out there in viewer and listener land who our next guest is on our next podcast on April the 22nd.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, on April the 22nd, we have the man himself, Maryland State Comptroller Peter Franchot, on our broadcast. Very excited about this. There's, we're going to try to keep it to it, not only out of respect for his time, but you, the viewers. We could go on for hours with this guy because of his career and everything else, but we'll keep it crisp. By the way, shout out to his field director of Howard County, Sean Ford, who I ran into at the recent forum that we talked about last time, and I mentioned to him that I'd love to have Comptroller Franchot on the show, and he facilitated that. So Sean, thank you so very much. But yeah, really looking forward to the show. Looking forward to really hearing from the man himself. And yeah, stay tuned. It's going to be a heck of a show. And There's not going to be any banter beforehand. We're just going to get right into it, and have a great time and a very engaging discussion with Comptroller Peter Francho. So thank you, Bill. Looking forward to it.
Oh, absolutely. And hopefully that will make one and all very, very happy. So yes, I have Peter Francho as my number one candidate. He just basically keeps rolling along. I mean, even in a poll that was commissioned, he emerged with, I believe, an 8-point lead. I think 23% to I think 15% for Mr. Baker. So when even your opponent's campaign polls are saying that you're ahead, you got to be doing some stuff right. So we are proud and honored to have Comptroller Francho on for the first time in a couple years on the podcast on April the 22nd. And with that, we bring this April gubernatorial top 10 to a close. Steve, any last words?
No, we talked about there were going to be some movers and shakeups, and there certainly are those. I think that, if the race is not settled into certain tiers, I think we're there now. I think that, we look at the top five, those are the people who you really think they're in the mix right now. There may be a few at 6 or 7 that still can find their way, especially with the primary being slid back. But I think we really have a really good focus. And again, our next podcast our next top 10, will be after the numbers come out for April. So that should add even more clarity as to, who's got the cash and the resources to make that run to the finish line. So looking forward to that. And, obviously we're off next weekend. So happy Easter, everybody, for those who celebrate. Happy Passover for those who celebrate that as well. If I missed any celebrations, please forgive me. But enjoy the time, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to it with Comptroller Francho.
Indeed, and not only did I learn about Susie Turnbull's lieutenant governor candidacy, which I knew she was when she did it, but also some to veer off into the world of football for 15 seconds. Sad news for fans of the Washington Commanders, nay Redskins. The former quarterback Dwayne Haskins was killed today. Was in a car accident and was killed. So he was trying to latch on as a backup with the Pittsburgh Steelers most recently. So at the age of 24, that's quite a shame.
That is very sad. Wow. So, I didn't know that.
So for Steve, I'm Bill. You have been watching and/or listening to another edition of Forward Maryland. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.